talking about glitter too. Who knows? I make a master plan when I do these interviews. I just let them go where the
I
flow.
am totally fine. I just filmed a documentary about another book I've written, um, about the Manson family.
Oh, okay.
And
I I guess we'll start there. That's wild.
and but I also do want to talk about Pop Pop and Bill Stevenson, because I
Sure.
guess I'm filling in for him. But
Yeah. Yeah. I kind of like yeah. So to everybody that's joining us right now, right? Everyone's live, and we are live on Twitch right now. So I'm just gonna say like Deborah is being gracious enough because this was going to be another guest, but they are not well, and Deborah is filling in, and she is the publisher, writer yourself, I imagine,
yes,
right? Right?
I'm a writer and a former literary agent, and I'm an indie publisher. But my first love is writing, editing, and creating and bringing other people's work into fruition.
So that sounds like so yeah, publishing or agent would be perfect for you, and you've done both, so that seemed like a magical combination. I'm interested because I was at San Diego Comic Con last year, and I actually got to start talking with agents. I got to kind of watch the publishing industry where it is today. We'll talk about. I promise you, we'll get to your books and stuff.
Oh,
It's
my daughter, I'm fascinated with the whole Comic-Con world because my older daughter, all three of my children are very, very creative.
yeah.
My oldest daughter is a visual artist who specializes in fantasy art, and she takes me to the Comic Cons.
Yes.
And plus we have a publishing imprint um, that is for ufology. So we cover the gamut, and I love the whole Comic-Con world. I
Yeah.
think it just brings together creative, amazing people.
I Comic Cons are my second favorite communities to be a part of. The other one is the video game community. I know like we're on Twitch, right? The most passionate fan bases I know are video games. Then it's comic book people, and it's and people that just like love certain kind of shows. But I would say video games are the most rabid fan base today. But Comic Cons are awesome, like all of them. I did San Diego for the first time last year, and it's one where everybody goes to, right? Not just comic
Oh,
creators, but
that's the big one.
yeah,
I haven't been to that one. I go to
that,
New
that
York.
New York is the second biggest one. That's not a small one. That's one I haven't done yet. I'd like to do. I might actually try to figure out a way to get there. Um, Although I am Canadian and my money is terrifyingly worth very little right now. Even so, I would find a way to get there and do stuff there. It's it is an amazing it's amazing to watch. People love stuff, and I think that's the one thing I'm always when I always go to a Comic Con I love is people love stuff. It is the biggest like impression you'll get no matter where you go, what you do, where you end up. It's that's just the
I can
that's the
explain why.
yeah. Okay.
It's I can explain it. See, and it also corresponds with the burgeoning world of social media and digital marketing.
Yeah.
See, what happened is when I was young, there were only like a few stations, and everybody had their eyeballs on the same stuff at the same time. And
Yes.
that's why I also publish books about some of the TV classics shows, like I did The Munsters and Lost in Space and things like that, Donna Reed, because when we were young, we used to all watch the same shows. And so you would
Yes.
talk about them and have a shared experience. Well, when cable started, people were so dispersed that it was very rare that any advertisers could get people together at the same time. And there's so much competition for people's entertainment
Oh yeah.
that we create tribes. And that's why people have these fan bases for things where they can feel connected to other people and share that experience.
Oh yeah, no, I was just gonna say like I think that one of the coolest things about human beings in general, we all obsess over stuff, and it's what we do and what I and it's part of our charm. We'll find something we love or something that really appeals to us, and we'll talk about it ad nauseum. Like I'm a big comic book junkie. I still am a big comic book junkie, and I always will be. Right? I love reading comics. I think more than anything else in the world. I love creating novels more than I like reading them, and that's kind of like that. That's the right. I still love reading books too. It's just that's where my love has been. It's just we all have those like little things that we really feel drawn to, and
What's your
you go.
jam for the comic books? Which ones do you love?
I'm a big Green Lantern guy.
Awesome.
I'm a big Green Lantern guy. I so here's my story with that. When I was 8 years old, my parents went through a very nasty separation. It was incredibly nasty, and afterwards, my dad, I didn't expect any of a. I picked live with my dad, and he's like, "Well, I gotta get you into something, and I want you into something." So this is back in the days when comics were still more readily available at 7-Elevens and stuff like that. And one
I
of
got a
my
story to tell you when you're done.
yeah. So I ended up. So the first two books I ended up getting was a comic book called Starman by Roger Stern and Tom Lyle, which was it's still a really good run. I still have it, and Green Lantern #1, which is by Gerald Jones. This is Hal Jordan with the white hair and the spikes, and I started reading, and we started getting everything back then. And I grew up reading Hal Jordan and Kyle Rayner both, and it's also got to know Jon Stewart, Greg Gardner. So now I'm in a weird spot in my fan base now where it's like I kind of know the story at this point, so I'm not quite as enamored in it as I was when I was younger. But it still hits that little like nostalgia pop when I read them. And also, the current Green Lantern series is legitimately one of the funniest books I've ever read. I'd never expected Hal Jordan to be that. Hal Jordan of all the Green Lanterns is the least. He's the most two dimensional of all of them, right? So I never expected a Hal Jordan book to be this funny, this entertaining, this.
A lot of hidden humor. Now, when I was about 8, my dad was very young and he had a heart attack. And so he had to recover at home before he could go back to work. And I got to, and he was, he used to travel a lot. Now he was home. So we used to go every Sunday to pick up, we lived in New York, we pick up bagels and stuff like that. And we'd go next door to the pharmacy where they had comic books. Now I liked the girly ones, and the um Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the Archies, which I'm a huge fan of the show Sabrina. Okay, I
Yes.
love it. And my father, he used to bring me because he wanted to get all of the DC comics and the creepy. He also would get, so it was like, oh no, I'm taking my daughter to get these comics, but then he would buy a whole bunch,
You
and
see,
just
this
even
is
the
he
smell
was
of them.
he was a smooth operator.
Yes,
I can
he
respect.
was. He was
I can respect.
awesome. We
Yeah, no,
shared that.
yeah, no, no. I
A great
so
memory.
Sabrina is it. Okay. So this is gonna sound terrible, and I'm gonna say this. I actually started. A buddy of mine wanted to collect just bad comics, like comics that wouldn't fit him. So modern Sabrina, not old school Sabrina. I gave him a modern Sabrina comic. I kind of dig what they're doing with her. They actually turned one of her books into a horror book right now. It's actually interesting, right? It's actually interesting. I think the Archie characters are probably what comics most hidden success story because they're the one group of comics that have never left the grocery store, and
Right.
there's right they're the one that hasn't. So they have figured out, this is to Archie's credit, Archie's figured out how to make their comics profitable all the time. They have this digest version, like manga steals, like manga and Archie have a very similar model. And in that they make a digest version of their books and they put them out there. And for your investment, like I will pay $15 for a manga book, or maybe Archie's a little cheaper. We'll say $10 for an Archie book right now, but I'm getting like 100 pages of content. right? So I'm reading a good and this is Archie's been doing it this way for decades.
You
Not
have no idea how much I was able to get these comic, or how little, when I was a kid, with
yeah.
my little allowance, and we would walk. A group of us from the neighborhood would walk. It would take us all day, and we'd go to the pharmacy. We'd go to 7-Eleven, and we would spend on 2 comic books, a slushie, and penny candy, and still have
Okay.
money left, because that was back in the day. And yeah, it was like a treasure. It
Yeah,
was awesome.
so when I started reading comics, comics were in the 85 cent to $1.19, depending on the
Right.
company. That's where it started. Now they're $4.99, $5.99, $6.99, depending on the book.
You don't
And
want to know what it used to be like 12 cents, 24 cents,
yeah,
25
oh
cents
no,
for
no,
the doubles.
I had some of those comics, but like those comics are worth their weight in gold now. Uh, and I've been purging my older, like some of my collection, because I want to travel with this show. Like I want to actually go on the road and do the show in person. So I'm not going to be around to enjoy my stuff as much, or at least as much as my stuff as I'd like to. So, I'm trying to figure that all out still. But when I have that all nailed down, I'm going to be coming back here every once in a while to pay for my stuff. So I really want to enjoy what I have. So I'm in a slightly different boat now, where it's like I do want my stuff, but I don't want all of my stuff anymore, if that makes sense. And
Well, collecting, the fun is the acquisition.
yeah,
A lot. I
well,
mean,
for the
that's
most
part of the fun.
but it's for the most part, I really enjoy I just finished reading Ultimate Spider-Man #1. That is an interesting premise on Peter Parker. It's what if Peter Parker didn't get bit by that radioactive spider until he was in his 30s and he had a wife?
Interesting.
That's an interesting concept. I like that idea because it is different. It is not the same. It's not the same old spider, and I think that's good because of all he is the one character I think that would be Spider-Man and had a family, and he would be an interesting because you could see him as a dad, you can see him with kids, you could see him
Play.
that you
He
totally could
had
see.
a good he had a good family life.
Yeah, so you totally could see it. So he should be one of those guys where it's just like I never understood why they decided him to make a deal with the devil. That was one of the dumbest things I'd ever seen in It's up there. It's not the dumbest Spider-Man thing. I just say the word clone and people just like you just see a whole bunch of the fan base just shudder. But they try like they this is a cool chance to expand his status quo, and I'm for it because I would rather see that. I would rather see that. He's the one character you could have write him from a teenager to an old man being Spider-Man, and they would be interesting stories all the way through. And I think at this point, like starting at that particular point of view is interesting, right? It's an interesting. How does he handle being Spider-Man, getting these powers as an adult with responsibilities already? Is he a part-time? I could see him as a part-time hero, not a full-time one. That's where I think they're gonna. We'll see what
And you also
happens.
have to consider the times.
Yeah.
Where would you put it in time and space?
Oh, it's modern
Because,
day. It's modern day.
but
So
as modern day continues to evolve,
yeah,
that also opens up a lot of possibilities for
absolutely,
intrigue.
absolutely. No, again. It's interesting because we've seen him as a teenager ad nauseum, him as a young adult ad nauseum, him as a married man has accomplished some things. That's neat. That's neat, and I'm for it. I'm definitely for it. So I'm with that. Like that's the thing. Like comics, the thing about properties with comic books is they you want to protect them to some degree because let's be honest, like you as a publisher, if one of your book series all of a suddenly overnight became this dynamic success, you'd be like, well, how did this happen? Well, first, like, and I mean that in like the best way. That'd be their first reaction, and then the second thing would be like,
How do
okay,
you duplicate it?
how do you duplicate it? But also, if you know what the formula is that makes it work, how do you not fuck this up? Right, right, and
Well,
that's
I run across that with the work I do as a memoir writer,
mhm.
and I developed a technique in writing, um, this book with my co-author Diane Lake, who was literally a member of the Manson family. She was the youngest member, did not participate in the crimes, but testified against them. And I had to take her through remembering things and then putting that in the context of the times and my research. And it was we kind of created a technique of how to do this. And now I'm doing it again as a similar project with survivors of the Jonestown massacre. If you're familiar with Jonestown,
I'm not as familiar with Jonestown. Right, right.
1978, in November, over 900 people either drank cyanide laced uh, Flavor Aid or they were murdered. And it's a fascinating story. And I'm working with 3 people who were able to escape on that day. And
Ah,
it's the same kind of life stopped and our perspective of reality stopped as what happened in the summer of 1969 with the Manson murders. It's that kind of event that changed American history and American cultural history. It's interesting to me because I see familiar patterns from one cult to another. But my challenge is, how do I do it again? Because this first book was very successful, still is. And
mhm.
now I'm trying to write a sensitive, page turning book about this other similar situation, historic situation.
Well, I could think about a couple of approaches. The slight differences between the two. One of them is you have 3 perspectives versus one, and you also
Right,
had
exactly.
right, which means that you can't quite. You can still tell a personal story. Like the thing about the Manson thing, like the big thing there, it's also her her position, like the fact that she was there and it was her and only her, and she somehow walked away from this, which I'm sure messed with her head too a little bit, because that's she's grateful she's here, but why is she still here? And that's something I'm sure she had to deal with as through the years. On top of that, it's become famous what he did, right? And for good or ill, and some of the things he's done has definitely made an impact. I would argue to some degree how we're advertised to is the direct result of some of the things that have happened in there, because some of the things the cults do work. And I'm sure people were like, well, let's take what we use. And that sounds like a little, maybe sound a little terrifying for me saying that, but I can see some of that getting people to buy into an idea, whether it's a sales pitch or a religious pitch. There are similar
Oh,
techniques.
of course there are. It's manipulation.
Yeah,
And what happens with the cult leaders is that they bring it to an extreme. Typically there's either, well, with Jones there was drug use and mental illness.
yes,
With Manson, I believe there was mental illness and circumstances. And it's absolutely out of the same playbook. Any kind of subliminal control and brainwashing, these things are done all the time. And there are cults, I don't want to digress our conversation too much, but there are cults now all over the place. And people would say, well, it would never happen to me.
oh no, it totally can.
But it totally can. And it's not that people are stupid or throwaway. It's anytime you're vulnerable, you're seeking, and you want somebody to give you answers,
Yeah,
you're vulnerable.
well, absolutely. And I'm gonna go one step further, and I think this is just a societal, like part of what I kind of see we don't live in I think a time right now where I've said this about politics, but I think this applies here too. There's no clear answers anymore because I think an honest thing is none of us are entirely sure what's trustworthy anymore.
The
I
very
think
good
that
point.
yeah,
Very good
right.
point.
Right. So the natural inclination is to find a group that if maybe if not fully true that you identify closely with, right? And I think this applies even to like the political structure a little bit too today because we're not here to debate like politics, but whether you're with Trump or with Biden, whether you're with Democrats or Republicans, or whether you're liberals, conservatives, whatever the case may be, you're embracing an ideology. So what's
And
happening?
you can't really trust it either.
No, and no, you can't. No, and
It
that's
used to be easy.
no, because and then this is what makes this tough. Because what a lot of people do because they don't have answers, they're scared. This is the other thing too. I think because they don't have answers, they're scared. So you find this group you identify with, okay? And so now, right? If I go, let's say something terrible about Biden, people that have bought into the idea will now feel like I'm attacking them because as human beings, going back to something I said earlier, ironically it ties into our comic book aspect of things. We obsess over stuff. It's how we're built. So if we let an idea fully embrace an idea without actually, right, if we accept it completely and fully, it is
Without
very
critical thinking.
yeah. Oh no, but that's the thing. Once the idea is accepted, it's very hard. It's very very hard to not hear a critical thought against what you believe that's being challenged and not take it as a personal attack. And this is not. It's universal. We all have biases. So like when you look at a cult, and I'm going now just strictly into cults, they prey on that. And this is in many ways an opportune time for them because again, there is no clear answer anymore to what is real. And this is the fault of our leaders being less transparent and lacking integrity. That But because of that, because we don't have anything like that exists, people are naturally looking for what works because that's how we're looking for an answer that we all can live with. I think that's the very human part of it. But what happens is there's so much, as you say, that vulnerability now is much more out there than it ever was. And so I think all of us could do well to be like, what ideas we accept as true, right?
That's
Maybe,
why I
yeah.
wrote this book. This is
Ah,
the second edition. It's called Spiritual Writing from Inspiration to Publication, but the first 100 pages are about finding your divine inner voice. What is your message? And how do you discern what's true for you without all of this dogma and all of these false narratives? And
yeah,
the timing of this book was very uncanny.
yeah.
It was right when I mean, I'd been working on trying to redo it for a long time and it kept getting delayed, and it finally came out after the pandemic. And now what I do is I work individually with writers. Not all of them are actually looking to write their book, but I take them through a course of getting to know why do they want to write a book, what is their message, so that they are accepting individuality as
Yeah.
their reality, other than turning to other people.
Yeah. I'm both ways on that. We work like there are pros and cons to both. Like individuality, the problem is we're by ourselves. That's not always a good thing either. Right? There's that balance. We need community. At the same time, like if you're not sure about like this is the weird thing, right? A community can go awry. And that's what like when you talk about your books there, like the books you're writing, the Manson one in particular, that community went completely awry. Jonestown, from what it sounds like that meant once upon a time might have been a healthy community, right? What happened? And that, I mean, that's part of the mystery
I don't
too.
know that either of
Oh,
those communities started out
that's fair.
healthy, because
That's fair.
There's a difference with those kinds of communities because there was a leader that people were focusing on who then had to keep leading
Hmm.
and kept having to create a scenario where the followers thought they were more than what they were, more
That's fair.
supernatural in some ways. They both did things to try to prove that they were special beings. So I don't know, but they looked like they could have been healthy communities. That's why
Yeah.
people were attracted to them, because with Manson, he looked like any other guru commune that existed in the 60s,
Yeah.
an intentional community. And Jones, his whole thing was to help the poor and to help integrate society. That's how it started out. So people who wanted to do more in the 60s toward integration, social services, they thought, oh, this is great. We can still be religious, but we're doing more of what for if it was a Christian person, more of what they believed Christ wanted them to do, so they were living it. And that's how they started. And then they went awry because they were focused on one leader who became corrupted.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you. And truly the message of the spiritual writing book and Soul Odyssey not is before you take your message out into the world, to make sure that your ego's out of the way and your message is pure in that sense, and that you're writing from your deepest authenticity.
Yeah, and that's like I again, we're looking for authenticity today. Like it's something I really
Yeah.
realized. Like we are genuinely looking for it. We're tired of, for lack of a better term, the cardboard cutouts that you see on television in a lot of
No,
ways.
absolutely. And the BS. And
Yeah.
where our BS barometers are becoming very finely tuned.
Well,
And I
mine
would
is officially
hope.
busted. Well, mine's officially busted. Like I just said, you know what? I don't like. What you just get to a point where you're just like, are you like? I don't want my time wasted anymore. Like that's what like you come to that point. It's just like, look, I'm not saying you need to be perfect because Lord knows I'm not. But at the same time, I want a real thing, and because real is like that's the special thing. Like the idea of yeah, I feel like I think a lot of us feel this way is we feel like we've been lied to our whole lives in various forms, to various degrees, and it's gotten more and more this case as time goes on, and it's like, you know, the old the old movie network. I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I think a lot of us have hit that kind of like inner thing. It's like I just don't want to deal with this
What
anymore.
was your turning point of feeling lied to?
Ironically, when I was a teenager and I read Fahrenheit 451 for the first time, it made me look at the world in a very different light. Because what happened was I realized that a lot of us get distracted with a lot of things that are going on. Even as a young kid, I noticed this, and I went down my own rabbit hole for a little while too. And then I've seen some things, and I've moved a lot as a kid, so I've had the pleasure, privilege, and maybe also consequence of seeing different cities at different points of development. So it's almost like I got to read a book at like reading a. If my story is a book, like where most people that grow up in a community evolve at a certain pace, I've had the privilege, pleasure of going to all these different places and having different advancements, de-advancements, depending on where I was. Some places offered things I never seen before. Other places I've been there before. You know what I mean? And so it's almost like I could experience it. So, and once I started seeing that pattern, right? Once you see that pattern, you no longer look at the world the same way. You just don't. Like what happens is now you're looking at it in terms of, have I seen this before? Where did it go? Even the pandemic, like even though the events of the pandemic were unique, a lot of the tactics that a lot of leaders were doing, I've seen them before. Right. And when I've seen and when I've seen when you start noticing, hey, I've seen this, I know what that felt like before when this crisis happened and that crisis happened. And suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I'm not going to be so quick to cooperate, right? Because now that I've seen this before, or at least not the event, but the methods used, I'm far less I'm far less quick to trust. And because I've seen where this has gone, but gone, so I kind of know what to expect a little bit, right? And so that's kind of the thing. Like, what, because I've moved around as much as I have, and I've been around a lot of different communities, I've gotten a lot. I have more of an insight into how some things work. I see things in a way where a lot of people don't, because of how much I've traveled. So now it's just like, okay, I'm much more likely not to buy into a rhetoric. I will take a step back and go, okay, what's going on? Right,
It's good to question. My generation, I was very, very young, but we started out with the Kennedy assassination.
yeah.
And I was alive when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and the Vietnam War. We started losing our innocence, and then the whole thing with Watergate. I still to this day don't fully understand it, but I know that we were losing our innocence. And yet I grew up in such an idyllic time where at that time, at least where I grew up, you go leave the house in the morning, you come back when the lights turn on, there's community, and we didn't know about some of the awful things that started happening with serial killers and abduction. I mean, there were so many things, especially when media developed to the point where we could have news 24 hours a day. It's almost like, well, who needs it? It's almost better sometimes if we don't expose ourselves to all of these fear messages and biased messages, because life is difficult enough, especially for me. Again, my leaning is toward a spiritual approach to life, not necessarily religious, but to try to look at the good in things and the possibilities in things. And so for me, with all of those events that happened in my lifetime, I truly try to avoid getting sucked into those rabbit holes of news and fear mongering. And I think you probably do as well, because you're trying to find your own truth.
Well, it's more like, if I'm going to look up like events of the day, I will go, like, I don't just go one particular, like, I will listen to, I will very rarely watch network news of any kind, whether Canadian or American. I will very rarely watch it. What I will do instead is I will go to like Substack, because there's a lot of like really good journalism there. If I want to read about something, that's a good place to start. Then I'll look at stuff like I will look at some alternative stuff. Like, I will look at Russell Brand. I will look at some of the other like people that are covering the news and analyzing the news, not just Russell, but others as well. That will
wouldn't you think he's a little extreme?
He is. But here's the thing, okay?
I've only had little exposure to him.
So the thing about him is, he kind of, where me and him kind of see eye to eye is moral authority's gone. And by that I mean, like we no longer trust our leaders. So now, under the auspiciousness of who benefits, as cynical as that might sound, is not a bad approach to how you look at our leaders at this point.
So you're following the money.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something he does. Now, do I agree with every single conclusion he comes up with? No. But it's one end. Then I go, like I said, I look at Substack, and then I look at some other people. Again, not just him. I look at others as well that do their own analysis. So I may not completely share his point of view, but I will understand where he's coming.
Raise good questions.
Right, exactly.
And it gets you to think.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's important. I want that. If I'm going to get a bias in my journalism, I would rather the bias come from a place of passion over a place of fear. There's a difference, and again, I don't necessarily think he's completely right about everything. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is at least he's genuine, and I can at least respect that genuineness. Whereas, again, I'm not saying whereas someone like say Alex Jones, I avoid that like the play because again, there's a he has gone he is how would I put this? He has gotten into that place where if you gaze into the abyss, the abyss gazes back. That's kind of how I feel, right? That's kind of how I feel about Alex Jones, and there's truth
He's
in
so
that.
dangerous.
Yeah,
Our brains can only tolerate so much. And that's why, like when I was working on a member of the family, and people would ask questions, I would say, I am not going down that rabbit hole. I have to have a linear perspective, a through line that makes sense to me and where the information holds true
yep,
because we almost have too much information at
we
our
do,
fingertips.
we
I mean,
do.
and it can just make you insane, which I don't want to go there.
No, it can freeze you, like that,
Yeah,
like the so mythologically speaking, Odin, the god of
yeah.
wisdom. He had so much information around him. There was a point he couldn't move, right?
It's
That's because
paralysis.
yeah, it was paralysis. He couldn't because he had access to all of them. Like no one wants like seriously, if omniscience is real, no one wants it. Like
No.
no one wants it. Like I'm telling you guys straight up, you would not want it.
That movie
It
Bruce Almighty was hilarious when he starts hearing all the prayers
yeah.
and
Oh
then God says, but that's only your area.
yeah.
It's not even the whole world. It's just overload. You can't
Y-
possibly assimilate that kind of information. But I do want to mention our pop.
yeah. Let's bring pop up in here. Say a quick hello while I'm adjusting my mic
Yes,
slightly.
I have published this amazing book. It's actually a combination of 3 books in one, um, which is a series called Ricky's Dream Trips. When I started having my own publishing company, I had taken over a platform that was for self-publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And after having been a literary agent I've written 13 books myself that have been published. So, and I'd studied digital marketing, social media. So I said, these people are not going to go anywhere with their books. So I was able to reverse engineer the platform and create micro-publishing media. And I continued working with William Stevenson. He had been part of that other platform because these books are really great. He's an educator and he has written stories that Pop and Ricky take these dream trips to the ancient worlds. This one has Egypt, Greece, and Rome, and they have an adventure where Ricky is the hero, but it's real information. So parents who are trying to give their children some education are also giving them edutainment. They're reading a book that's going to teach them something, and yet it's an adventure story. It's designed by Fireman Creative, and they've got exercises for how to learn hieroglyphics.
Nice.
I mean, I love these books. I think every school should have
I
them.
I so my secret belief is that every school should be teaching science and math with Lego
Yeah,
because you make it a game, kids will learn. And the fact and you like you take 4 different colored Lego box, you can teach DNA. Just four.
you
That's all you.
can. And
Yeah.
what Bill did with his other books, he's got a book Under the Sea where he teaches all about the ocean. He's got one, Ricky's Dream Trip to Outer Space. All of these books this one we just happened to make it available at bookstores the others are all available on either at Pop Pop Press, or I have an online bookstore. See, you like comics. If I took all the books out of my house, because I have inventory in my house, and my house would rise up 3 feet. Seriously. Thank God I have this big old house in New England. But I really love the Ricky books, and they're for all different, really, they're illustrated, but they're sophisticated enough for a young reader. And then I commissioned this Reading Bear, and he's available on Deb's Book Paradise. And this is called Turner Bear, because he's a page turner. His mother is Paige. We did a contest, and he's a little reading bear. And then to encourage reading, another thing that I have, this is by Curtis Ivory. He's a wonderful educator in Detroit, and he created a book. I mean, this is really a beautiful book, with exercises and activities. Especially, it was great during the pandemic. There are over 100 activities that parents and children can do, children of all ages, to encourage reading and to also work together for technology. So it's just so that they're not always plugged in or on their phones or iPads, but it's things that families do together.
I truly think, like, I think education, like, it's going to go more along the realms of game theory as we get older.
Gamification.
Yeah, because it makes sense. We live in the, like, look, the one thing digital has changed is we are, like, I still play video games. Like, I don't watch television very much anymore. Like what I watch, I watch professional wrestling, and occasionally I'll listen to like some sports debate shows, just because they're completely mindless while I'm
We could
working.
still be friends, but those are not my choices to
No,
watch.
no.
I like
Because
Frasier. I still watch Frasier.
I like old Frasier. I'm not as crazy about new Frasier.
I know he's gotta get his stride. I'm on a talk about fan base. I'm on a fan site for
Yeah.
Frasier, and we're all debating new Frasier. But I have watched old Frasier every episode like a bazillion times.
Okay, so I hope you take this, like, in the constructive, like, gentleness. I think it went on a little too long, the first series. I think the set, like, that would have been a great 7 or 8 year series. He went. I know why he did it, because he wanted to set a record. There was part of like he wanted how long a guy played the same character, but it had its moments. It's a
You are
fantastic.
not a true Frasier fan.
No, and I never said I never
Oh,
I was,
because
but I
we
never.
couldn't
But
get enough. We hated when it
no,
ended.
no. And but okay, to me, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I remember I grew up when I was a kid. Cheers was on. I remember he showed up here, and I remember when the show first started. I think of all the characters, why him? Like, because they all were interesting and unique. And then afterwards, I realized, no, he's the only one that makes sense with, actually, because he's the only character with the potential. The only other one you could have done, and it never would have happened, would have been Diane. That have been the only other one you could have continued with. And that cast was amazing. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, he was of all the characters, he was the one that could be fleshed out even more. And I was pleasantly surprised. Like, that was a very great cast. Again, my own personal take, it went on a touch too long, but
I think a lot of people feel that way. Do
Yeah.
you realize how tall Kelsey Grammer is?
Yes.
I went with my brother, used to have a company that did the gifting suites at some of the, like, award shows. And I went with him because I'm such a TV classics geek and have an imprint called TV Classics Press. You could find it on Facebook. Anyway, I went with him one year, and the cast of Cheers was there, and Kelsey Grammer was there, and I'm about 5'2", and I just remember walking up to him and
Like, holy crap. Yeah. Hey,
So tall, and he's so nice.
no. So my.
That
Let
was
me
a
tell you.
thrill.
So my favorite performance by Kelsey Grammer, ironically, is the early Sideshow Bob stuff. I love.
Well, because that's your
I'm
generation.
yeah, no, but it's also I know I also
Great in that.
no he's also like you could tell he was having so much fun playing Sideshow Bob,
Yeah.
right? Because Sideshow Bob was yes, he's a villain first off, and I know this is when I write villains. Villains are fun. They are super fun, right? And you got this character who's like that they made fun of all the evil twisted villains of the 80s, and he was the ultimate like thing. And then of all things, my personal favorite was Bart's final request of him doing that all big performance on the boat. That to me, that
That's
to me,
that he
that was
probably loved doing.
no, that was awesome. Like whatever else whatever like I again, The Simpsons has stayed on TV far too long, but I can definitely look at the first like 7 years. Again, 7 8 years feels like the magic number with television, um, and again, and on the flip side, I understand why series continue. When they make money, you make them continue. I totally understand it, but from creative quality, the early Sideshow Bob stuff is like I enjoyed him
I'm
on
gonna have to
Beast.
go
Like
back and watch now again.
yeah, the early
Watch it with
ones.
my kids.
Yeah. The first I would say the first three, when Sideshow Bob became mayor, that is still one of my all time favorite Simpsons episodes. Period. Like
Well,
it's just.
now I know what I'm going to have to binge watch because I need stuff to watch. And I play some games on my phone, but again,
No, no, it's
my kids are gamers. Um, and now I have a grandson who's plays Mario Kart and the whole thing.
Mario Kart's the shit. It totally
That's what
is.
I know, and they all gang up on my oldest daughter.
Yeah,
Uh,
they have
Everybody
to.
gangs up on her. So yeah, it's another new generation of
Well,
gaming.
well, it's also because, and this is something I would point out. If you want gaming's big advantage over television is interaction. Even books, like as good as books are, books you can imagine. Some books, there is an activity. Pardon me. There's an activity with books, but you can't. Even books cannot compete with the interaction. I love video games. I like video games with great stories in them too. Like
What
I'm
was
a
your
bit
all-time favorite game?
ooh tough one. So playing with other people, Super Mario Kart 64. Playing by myself, I'm gonna go with a fantasy series. I'm gonna go with either Final Fantasy VI from the retro or Tales of Xillia modern or modernish, I should say. So Final Fantasy VI, the bad guy wins halfway through the game. He wins. I no, he like the world blows up legit. This is like in terms of the characters, the story was it's one of the
I
darkest
know
moments.
about it, and
Yeah,
I understand it's wonderful. I mean, like
yeah,
really a masterpiece.
yeah. No, it is. I also love the fact that you have a choice when the world blows up. The very first like character that you get to play with again, you have an option to save the person that's there. Story wise, it's actually better if you don't. It's one of the darkest moments I've ever seen in a video game, right? It's also by random.
Your generation is so interesting.
Well, no. But in terms of storytelling, because it's about because the second half of the game is
Choice
okay. It's hope. It's
and
hope.
yeah, it's choice,
It's about
strategy.
it's a right. But the darkest moment of the series, like the darkest, and anyone that's played this game will know what I'm talking about. The darkest moment of the series is if you fail to save this character, she's the last survivor on this island. That's it. It's her. And she actually legitimately tries to end it all before she finds her hope right after. It is actually, from a storytelling standpoint, and it's very real with the world that's going on right now, because the world is in ruin. It's literally right. So where do you go from here? And it's a great, and all the way through. So that's the old one. The modern one I'm talking about. So I never thought I'd like a sequel more than the original. The original is really fun, deals with environmental issues. It's a really fun love story. But the second game is interesting. It's a bit of a tropish thing when you start, but the true ending actually made me cry. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. The true ending actually made me cry, because your character, well, actually, the game made me cry twice. Twice. There's a boss you fight, and you fight, like, your main character has a brother, and there comes a point in the game. Now you can also do there's a bad ending there that's terrible, but if you do the proper correct play, you have to fight, and you actually have to kill your brother, but it's the right thing for what needs to happen. And it's a touching moment, because it's actually the last time they're together, and he's in tears because he
no, I
knows he
could
has.
cry.
Yeah, no, he's in tears because of what it is because what this is actually about is, because your main character meets this girl, and to save her, he has to become like this guardian kind of type, and his brother was sort of this person. So their last meeting is after the boss fight. They're in the house. They're in this house, and it's the only time you hear your main character speak too is because you hear a version of him go out the door. He's like, he thinks he's gonna bribe me with his favorite meal. It's like, and he does, because it's his brother. And then you show up, and you're in tears, and he's like, no, you got to do this, and I'm proud of you, and I love you. He starts to sing. It's heartbreak. It's wrenching. But it's the right thing. You're ready to cry, and you don't even know what the game's about.
I know.
No, right?
So
But
empathic.
it's such a beautiful moment. And then at the end of the game, you have a choice. And if you take the correct choice, the true ending of the game, the main character sacrifices himself for his daughter. It's beautiful, because she's going to be the one that takes the penance for everything that's happened.
Have you ruined this now for people?
Possibly. I'm okay with it. Right.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
Yeah. I say it like that because, like, this is how good storytelling has become in video games. Right? It's like I enjoy the Persona series, but in terms of a game that made me feel, I never thought it would be a sequel to the original game's great. Tales of Xillia 1 is fantastic, but Tales of Xillia 2, right? And there's a lot more like little moments in there that you're almost like, wow. Like,
You're working on a fantasy novel.
Ish. So I have a novel on it's actually with an agent. I actually did an urban fantasy kind of thing, like a la Kim Harrison, a la Ilana Andrews with Kate Daniels.
And you have an agent, or it's being considered?
It's being considered right now,
and let's all cross our fingers and hope.
Yeah. So
that you can get
talk about like we talk about authentic moment, but I think I have a shot, and here's why I think I have a shot. And this is because what the story is really about, and this is like the human element with myself, is that fear of finding love again. You find someone that loves you, and what do you do with it? And that's the real human moment. Any story we write, we talk about, right? We've started. No man. By the way, we have a guest. He said Skyrim. Skyrim's a good game, no man, but it didn't make me feel like the Tales did, and I just told you why, right? So, but I will say that, like, with games, with story, it's the real human elements that matter, right? So you want to people, like, you have to put yourself in your work. Like you talk about, like, finding your true message. What you're really talking about is, what do you care about? Authors get caught up so much in the head, the idea they're trying to build. And while that's important, it's not what really matters. What really matters is why
we're on the same page with that. That's what I work with people.
Yeah.
To keep getting to that why and that passion. You can't write for other people what you think they want. if it doesn't come from inside.
Well, like you can follow. Like, there's nothing wrong with following a format. I want to say this. Like,
Right.
I've come to a point in my life where it just I don't really. This is gonna sound really really corny. I don't care how you do it because that almost doesn't matter. What matters is, okay, are you putting yourself, like, the hardest thing an artist has to do is put themselves out there. That is the hardest thing, because even in a perfect world, you are going to be rejected. That's life, right?
I
And
know nothing about that.
nothing.
Nothing. Never
Yeah,
had any bad review, never had anybody reject me, never. I'm kidding.
yeah. But also, okay. So I said this too.
It goes with the game.
It goes with the game, but also let's talk about you as an agent. For you as a publisher, you as an agent, there are books you say no to, not because they're bad books, but because it's not the right time for you to use them for whatever reason. It doesn't rejection's not necessarily personal. In fact, I would go so far to say this is the hardest thing an artist is going to have to swallow, and even it includes myself, because in the moment it's going to suck. It's a kindness, because you are not wasting my time. You're not telling me that you're going to pick me up, and then you're not afraid to tell me no. You respect me enough to tell me what it is. And maybe if you have time, you tell me why. But
Well, that's why my husband writes a book every year. We've done a lot for helping writers to be professional. So, like, we did this book. This book has sold well over 250,000 copies. It's the book for people who want to access the traditional industry. And then this one tells not only how to write and everything, but also how to build a platform online. And we also did a book on what agents and editors want, because you're absolutely right. We have to make decisions based on who's ready. And so unlike a lot, well, I'm not agenting per se. So what I do is I work with writers to get them to the point where it's ready.
Yeah.
And to give them that learning curve. Now it saves them time, because they've got a professional telling them this isn't going to work because blah, blah, blah. But here's how you could make it work.
So not ready. So there are four reasons to fire somebody. The most forgivable one of them all was my first reason. You're not ready. That's not a crime. That's not a crime. That is, you're just not there, and that's okay.
I was fired from my first agent.
Yeah.
He said, come back in 5 years.
Yeah.
He said, you've got the talent, you need the experience, you need to learn. You wouldn't wake up and say one day, I'm going to be a brain surgeon without a learning curve.
Yeah. No, but that's life. Like, a lot of people, like,
not ready.
Like, what I've done, like, this is like my 1045th show, scarily enough, right? And one of the things I've learned doing this interview is I can look at what all authors have in common, and there is a passion that's there. Traditional publishing wants that passion, but what they also want, how far are you willing to go to be ready?
Right.
That's the real question. A lot of people do not and this, like, even, okay, there's a writers conference in Calgary called When Words Collide. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a decent sized little conference. And as I've done this show, as I've made money as a freelancer doing my thing, I make marketing tools for I can do it for businesses, I can do it for authors, publishers, that kind of thing. I know how to, like, using this kind of platform to do it.
We'll have to talk.
We will. We'll talk when this is over. But
after you do your other meetings.
Yeah. Well, you send me your email when it's over. We'll figure some stuff out. But one of the things I've learned is, right, I'm not ready is totally forgivable. The thing that you are looking for as a publisher and as an agent, how willing are you to be ready? Because you can teach everything else, right? Everything else can be taught. Everything. But if you're not willing to make the changes necessary to be ready, you're never going to get in. And again, this is why I have a little bit like, again, maybe bravado, ego, blah blah blah. Whether it's this person or not, if I really want to pursue the traditional, I think I could get it. Only because, not because I'm good. This is the best part. This is something I like. This was like a eureka moment, right, for me. I don't even have to be good. It's nice if I'm good, but I don't even have to be good. I have to be ready. And there's a huge
and follow
difference.
certain protocols, which is what Jeff
Yeah.
and I, my husband Jeff Herman and I teach people,
Mm-hmm.
so that they're not dismissed out of hand,
Yeah.
because there are automatically things that will get you turned down by an agent or an editor. And so we try to at least eliminate those things. Those are the immediate, because I've used to screen thousands of submissions,
Yeah.
and they used to come in physical envelopes.
Yes.
I have funny photos of me with my desk up to here going through manuscript. I've been curating manuscripts for 20 some odd years.
Yeah, and you're like, and you're looking at this like this a little bit, because now you're like, okay, you got like 3 pages to wow me, because if you don't, I'm not gonna, because I can't. There's no way in hell I can read all this. So,
And if I don't understand, the biggest thing, which we should maybe do an episode just talking about how to access publishing,
yeah,
because I've been on all sides of it. I can tell within the first paragraph or so if it's something I can pursue. And I can do that with a manuscript. I do manuscript assessments. I can look and I can tell you exactly what needs to be done to fix your manuscript, because I've read so many, and I've written 13 of them, and I've edited bazillions more, of other people's work.
yeah,
So it's not rocket science, but it is effort. My first book, okay, at the end of the day, I rewrote somebody's manuscript that was turned down by the publisher, and I thought it was a great job. At the end of the day, I earned maybe a penny an hour, but I paid my dues.
yeah. No, there's part of that. Like the part that's paying your dues. Part of it is just knowing your worth. This is the flip side of this too, is there comes a point in the game you got to realize, okay, this shit ain't cutting it no more, right? And like that sounds, there's that breaking in learning curve.
Oh, but that was years ago. At this point, I don't waste my time with.
No, exactly. No, and that's it. That's it. Like the people that really, again, there's a progression, and it's such an interesting thing, because what I look for, and what I look for with people when I see them do their stuff online, what are they saying no to? Because that also tells me a lot about how ready you are. Do you know what the right things to say no to are, right? What are the right things to say yes to, and what are the right things that are like no but. Like there's also the no buts, which is like, I don't like it this way, but I am open to the change. Let's figure out something that works for both of us, right? Because that's something else too. Like you don't like, no one wants. A publisher doesn't want to just steamroll an author. That means they're not ready to be here. But an author has to be willing to work with the publisher, and that's something that there is a professional balance there, right? And obviously the publisher gets the final say, because they're the ones that put in the money up, but they also want to make sure that the author's voice is intact. So the no buts, when I'm talking about no buts, I'm talking like what keeps the voice the way it needs to be, or why does this, like that, again, that willingness to work together, right? And that's something that you're nodding your head, so it's like I'm hoping I said that right. So
No, I'm trying to really listen, because we're starting this toward the end of our time together, and you're raising some very interesting points.
yeah,
And you're talking about a couple of different things, because there's indie publishing, which is hybrid and financed by the author, which you can get very ripped off if they go with the wrong kinds of companies. Or there's traditional publishing, where nowadays you want to bring to a publisher, something that you've already done as much as you can to make it sing and to make it ready, which means
Yes.
you're gonna probably have to work with an editor or a
Which
professional.
which is what I'm doing right now, right. So
Right.
like that's because
You got to
it's
do it. You got to
yeah
invest in yourself, both time, education. Not all of it has to be extremely expensive, but it has to be your willingness to learn. I mean, I have a social network for
yeah.
writers where they can talk to each other with, without having to hire anybody. It's called writers networking. And they can ask each other, well, how did you do this? And how did, who's reputable? And did you get a good result? So there's a lot of, look, writing is here to stay, whether it's an ebook, whether people tell stories through video games, whether it's audiobooks, whether it's physical books. I happen to love physical books, but
Most people
it's
most people
people
do.
will continue reading and they will continue writing.
Mhm.
That's not going to change.
Yeah. So I gotta say, it was I'm sad I didn't get to interview your author, but I am happy I got to meet you. I have to say it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yeah, we got lots in common.
Yeah.
And we're going to all wish Bill speedy recovery.
Yes.
He's a wonderful storyteller himself, and he really loves. This all started with a love of his grandson. He
Yeah.
started writing the Ricky stories when his grandson was young, and he was Pop Pop,
Yeah. And,
and now
and, and
he's everyone's Pop Pop.
now he's everyone's pop. Unfortunately, I'm hoping, but at some point down the road, I get a chance to interview him again. But to Bill, my best. You're welcome to come on the show anytime you'd like. It'll
Well,
be it maybe not be quite as diverse as this conversation was,
I
but
think
that's
we covered a whole lot of ground,
yeah. We didn't even get
which
into
is
aliens.
which is awesome.
We didn't even get into aliens. That'll be done in
Oh
another
yeah, we could
time.
do aliens another time.
But yeah, totally. So you gotta go. I gotta go. So how do we do this? Because what we should do is, okay, because you're the publisher, either what's your most recent book or what's your next book coming?
That I'm publishing.
Yeah, you're publishing. Pick either or. Let's do this right. Do a proper, like, plug that book and plug how people can find you guys.
Okay. Um, there's two companies that are the main websites. My online bookstore, where I sell all the books that I publish and a collection of one-of-a-kind out-of-print books, is Deb's Book Paradise. And you can find Little Turner Bear there. And Micro Publishing Media, that's micropublishingmedia.com, is my indie publishing company, and it shows all my brands and gives you information. The most recent book, I don't know if I have it, but you'll see them featured on my website. We just published two amazing books. One is called Sunday Dinners, Moonshine and Men. It's a wonderful memoir. It's about recovery. It's about it's has an LGBTQ aspect to it, for what is a lot of parents are interested in it, for children that are coming out to them. What's the right way to do it? Because in the story, it was the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's it's gotten a lot of great reviews. And then we have one called The Last Year of My Life. It's 10 leadership tools that turned a deadly diagnosis into a path of renewal, and it's by Iki Elner and Joshua Adams. Iki is the founder of the Israel Leadership Institute, found out that he taught leaders for ages and speaks all over the country, the United States, and churches and synagogues, and about leadership and unity. And then he got a diagnosis that he had 6 months to live. And so he used the tools that he had been teaching to fight it. And it's 7 years later, and he is doing beautifully. It's a very inspiring and wonderful book with actual practical tools. So those are the things coming from Micro Publishing Media. And of course, I'll be writing some books that maybe we'll talk about in the future.
I would love to. All right, folks. That will do it for this conversation. I will be back later today. I have an anthology of ladies. I feel like it's sad that they're all more adultier than me, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to step up my game on that, because it's an anthology for a comic book anthology. It'll be a lot of fun, so definitely check that
The more
out.
adulter.
They're more adultier than I am. You talked to me for like an hour. You know this. I'm not. I mean, I can pretend to be mature for a little bit, but
Yeah, but
not.
so can I. You think you think I'm mature?
I maybe question mark. Anyways, to
I
everybody
try.
watch. Yeah, yeah. I honest, like legit. I'll just say this. It's very impressive what you've built for yourself, and you should be very proud of it.
Oh, thank you. And you as well. This was a
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah.
So keep in touch.
So we'll talk a little bit off here before we disappear. But for everybody watching, everybody listening, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Stay inspired. Keep shining in the dark. I will be back later this afternoon. Take care of yourselves. And